Welcome to the Almost Reckless podcast. I'm your host, Amy Smilovic, and my guest today is Fran, Camaj, founder of the Gjelina Group. Okay, so today I'm with Fran, and he is. Can we run through? Because you're you're a proprietor, founder of many different restaurants and around the country, actually. And we're here in LA at Gjelina. And why don't you'll do the best introduction of who you are and what you've created here.
Well, who I am or I guess what I've created, I'm the founder of the Gjelina Group, and we are at its founding restaurant or founding space, Gjelina, which we opened in 2008, and
Which is a very long time in the restaurant
17
industry.
years is, yes, it's quite some time. I remember saying when we were busy at the first year or two, and I remember not being overly excited, saying, "Hey, this is LA, and it can be hot stuff for a while, but it can go away in a minute. And
Yep.
let's wait and see if we can go 5 years, and then after 5 years, let's see if we can go 10." And now there's just a lot of energy going. How many decades can we take this? And that's the hope and the goal that it continues for.
So we're on the Gjelina on Abbot Kinney in LA, and then you have one in New York that is amazing.
Gjelina, New York, opened on Bond Street.
Yeah.
Had quite a history behind it as well in terms of opening. But yeah, we've been open there now for a little over a year.
Yeah.
There's a Gjelina in Las Vegas at the Venetian where we opened.
Did New York come before Vegas or Vegas then New York?
Well, New York had two iterations, unfortunately. New York opened in 23 for a month. It was wildly successful, the long lines. And then on day 29, while people were having their breakfast, smoke coming from the ceiling, there was a fire, evacuate the building. New York Fire Department comes, destroys the ceiling, puts in 10,000 gallons of water, and it holds us up for a year and a half.
Wow.
So in that time is when while we were closed in New York the first time, we opened in Vegas.
Yeah.
And then after Vegas opening, we opened in New York.
Okay, so 3 locations, and then you have an incredible bakery.
Where I think you were at this morning.
Yes.
With Gabe, Gjusta.
Yes.
Gjusta is my aunt or Gjelina's sister. So we opened Gjusta Bakery here just about less than a mile away about 10 years ago.
Then you have a home goods
We have
store.
a Gjusta Goods, a little home goods store next door to
A flower
Gjusta
shop.
Bakery. The flower shop is now like part of the goods store.
And then a little market.
We have Gjusta Grocer, again, like a half mile away. Venice, a pretty small community that I've been in quite some time. And Gjusta Grocer. Yep.
Yeah. And so what I love is seeing everything that you've done. Like on the surface, someone could be like flower store, but it's all deeply connected. Like I understand the through line to how each thing came to be. But how did Gjelina come to be? Like where were you in life when this became conceptualized?
I moved from Detroit to Venice in the mid 90s.
Why'd you move?
I moved just for something wildly different. I did not have acting aspirations. I did not have a script. Weather-wise, I didn't know any better. I wasn't fed up with the weather or anything. I had some friends out here. I met some people. I said, I'll go to LA for a year or two. I'll check it out, and I'll be right back.
And your family were they like, go son, be free? Or did they wonder what in the world you were doing?
I come from a pretty traditional immigrant household. My parents and my siblings Albanians had immigrated from Montenegro. I was the youngest son, and like in theory, the youngest son sort of lives with their parents for a long time, and maybe even cares for their parents for a long time.
Wow.
And they were emotionally distraught, to say the least. Not that they weren't supportive, but they just were.
It wasn't in their plans.
It certainly was not in their plans. And
your brothers and sisters live?
My brother and sister are there still and stayed there. Yeah.
And do they have more? What kind of jobs do they pursue in life?
My brother opened a small computer software
Mm-hmm.
company
Mm-hmm.
in Ann Arbor.
Mm-hmm.
He did that basically his entire career,
Yeah.
30 years. He retired recently.
Mm-hmm.
And my sister is a PhD in clinical psychology,
Yeah.
so she has her own practice.
So you're like just you picked up, you moved to LA, and you're really not sure
Oh
what
yeah,
is going
not.
to be going on out
Oh
here.
yeah, not sure. Yeah, not sure at all. I was in my mid-20s, and I'm gonna go check out LA for a year or two.
Uh-huh.
And I knew I needed to make some money, so I immediately got a job waiting tables.
Yep. And so when you got the job waiting tables, were you doing it because it was this moment in time and then you were ultimately working towards something else, or were you really just giving yourself time to figure it out?
Uh, like I said, I knew I needed to I was looking to make money
Right.
to pay the bills and to pay rent, and then kind of figure it out from there. And
Mm-hmm.
from there, I sort of did. I was able to. I thought maybe I was going to get into teaching.
Yep.
Would teaching be interesting? And in California, if you have your college degree and you pass a basic aptitude test, you can become a substitute teacher.
Yep.
So I did that, and I was a long-term substitute, 8th grade in middle school,
Uh-huh.
and I also coached football down in Long Beach at the same time. So I was a little bit all over the map with, I'm going to say, 3 jobs. I air quote that a little bit, but yeah, I was teaching 8th grade science, I was coaching football, and I was waiting tables.
It's interesting because one of the reasons why I'm kind of probing on this is, at Tibby, we work with so many different people across a very wide spectrum of age groups, demographics. They live all over the world. And we work with them as customers, as people who would like to be a customer one day, and then as employees, right? And one of the things that often happens is, especially when young designers reach out to me, is they describe like a moment of waitering as a moment in time where they're just earning money until they become what they become. And they tend to really separate out that portion of their life. They almost just bifurcate it. And so this is a drudgery. And then when I get home or whatever, this is what I'll be doing. And I always think I learned so much when I was a waitress. You learn how to read people, you learn how to do quick math, you learn when to cut something off. And if you really separate your life out, it's hard to be in the flow and realize what you're learning. And I found it so interesting when you just said the 3 things: waiter, teacher, coach, and that it was all over the place. And I think those 3 things, to be able to explain things, to be able to get people pumped up about something, and to recognize human nature and how it all comes together, especially commercially, those are the 3 most important attributes in creating
Sure.
anything in life. Like that is the resume that is impossible to articulate in a Harvard business class or anything. Like that is the good resume. You must lean into that all the time.
Sure, I have to.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I would think for sure, like the coaching, you described how you open these restaurants, but then in New York, you've opened up and it's amazing. The restaurant's on fire and then it's literally on fire. Like, how did you pump yourself up to get over that? And
That one in particular, because the New York journey was so long to get it open to begin with. There were so many different things. We started that before COVID, and there was company things that happened and shifts. And then by the time everything was straightened out, it was 2019,
mm-hmm.
and then COVID hit,
Mm-hmm.
and then so that created another thing. But then post COVID, we were just very ready to open,
Yeah.
and but the fire, we were the last people that could kind of take that or afford that, so to speak. And but yeah, at the end, you have a choice.
Yeah.
You really have. you can feel sorry for yourself or angry or upset or shocked for a period of time, and you can take that internally. You don't necessarily want to show it to the team,
Yeah.
but and then you just yes or
You
no.
got to go on.
Are you going to move forward with it, or are you not going to move forward with
Yeah.
it? And if the answer is yes, then you're going to do it, and not talk about the what ifs and, oh, we were so this or so that, and
Yeah.
it was going, and it was going great. We were open just for breakfast and lunch, and there was like lines, and we were very close to starting to open for dinner, and we do things in a very methodical way, and we wanted to be an all day place, and uh, so yeah, that one hurt.
Oh, so I'm curious, because in Tibby now turning 30 next year for us, I think about some, you over the course with Gjelina, I'm sure you've had so many crazy ups and downs, and some of those first things that happen can almost probably seem as dramatic as what you experience with the fire, just because it's all relative at the time, right? Like something small could really fracture. Like when you were starting out, what was your biggest hurdle to just moving from doing this bundle of what you were doing to starting Gjelina?
Yeah, starting Gillian, the biggest hurdle was just learning, having to learn the process just head on, and sort of independently without really like a mentor. And when I mean the process, I mean uh, the the building process and the permitting process, and then the hiring process, and
Mm-hmm.
just never having run a company, never having managed people, and
Mm-hmm.
certainly then, and particularly then, I would not have called like managing people my strength.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but having to do it, having to learn it all was what was a lot. And then, but looking back on it, once you go through it, and then you looking back on it, you certainly, and I think you mentioned, things become like very relative, or the problems become, oh, you really, you had that much stress in your life over
Right.
that, and it wasn't even that big of a deal. And I can give like specific like money examples to that as well. Like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
I lost like this amount of money was either lost or not spent in a very smart way, or seemed very wasteful, and it seemed like an enormous amount of money, like
Mm-hmm.
$1,000 or 10,000. And just looking back, yeah, the relativeness to either the dollar amount or the size of the problem. Looking back, like, oh, was that really that big of a deal? And
Yeah.
and it was at that
It was
time.
at the
It
time.
was at the time, and yeah, if I were to give advice to myself, or put my arm around somebody, like, okay, let's just work through it, but it's not, it's it maybe not as severe as you think it is.
Well, yeah, I always, a lot of people, when they get caught up in wanting to start a company and how much they need in order to do it, I think about a lot of, in my business, the number of clothing brands that failed because they didn't have the luxury of a really small pocketbook when they were starting out. Because when you have a small amount of money, it is literally the thing that forces you to always be pragmatic and creative at the same time. And sometimes it's more creative than pragmatic, but that continuation of constantly having to look at, like, what is the return on this dollar, and then how can I use it in the way that's going to deliver the most function and the end goal creatively. When you're not pressured to do that, you can create shitty stuff. Like you can try shit that you have no idea if it works. It doesn't matter if it feels intrinsically right to you, because you've like all the money in the world to just piss it away. But when every dollar counts, you make it count,
Of course.
you know? And so I'm curious, when you said that you didn't have mentors or like these guidebooks to really like tell you exactly how it was done, do those exist and you just didn't know where to find them, or does it just literally not exist, and could it never exist even if people thought it did?
Oh, a guidebook is probably does not exist.
Yeah.
uh, who knows with AI someday, where that might go. But having someone, I think would have helped. Like I feel, and people here locally kind of maybe see me as like the expert in terms of, opening or starting a restaurant, and people. I've had coffees with people and given advice, what I think is like good advice, and to what degree they've taken it. We'll see. But I think having that advice from a person who's done it,
Mm-hmm.
who doesn't have any who doesn't have any like ulterior motive or motivation, just basically to give legitimately free advice,
Yeah.
could have been helpful.
Yeah, because what I found when I was starting out was there was just very rudimentary stuff that I needed to know that I didn't know where to go to for it. And I spent so much time coming up with solutions for things that, people are like, oh, but there's the on off button. And I was like, oh, okay, well,
Yeah.
I created a whole new machine because I didn't know about that on off button. But, but I also find that people nowadays, especially the younger generation, has been, and by younger, I mean like, I guess just not my generation, right? But this idea of like finding a mentor on LinkedIn and everything is, it's, it's kind of like it's such a false hope sometimes. Like sometimes I'm sure the community around you was able to answer some of the most questions on like just what's going on with the taxes or how do you get this with the building permits and things like that, right?
Yeah, sure. You got to do. Yeah, ultimately, I just did. You have to dig through it, and you'll get the
Mm-hmm.
answer if you really
Mm-hmm.
want to.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but again, it would have been easier if I had somebody. But yeah, the idea of like these networks or these communities that try to foster that, I don't really follow, either. And I think I know exactly what you mean in terms of, uh, that seems like a lot of either self-promoting or talking or.
Because there's just nothing that easy. I mean, there's no way a LinkedIn search is going to give you this person who all of a sudden will enlighten you
Yeah, no chance.
and make it run,
That's right.
So you moved to LA, you're doing these three things. What's the time between getting out here and then this becoming, getting visualized and coming to life?
So I came to LA in '96, and Gjelina coming to life or becoming the seed or just starting is like 2004 ish.
Mm-hmm.
In buying when we bought the building. So
And
8 years.
so when you called your parents and you're like, I'm starting a restaurant, were they thinking, oh, we always wondered one day when this would happen? Like this makes sense because you were always in the kitchen, you were always this or that, or were they just like, where is this coming from?
No, they were certain it was a horrific idea, the
Mhm.
restaurant business, the restaurant industry. But they also, from their perspective, uh, so the Detroit community, and I think you had mentioned earlier, your husband was Czech and he moved to Phoenix and didn't have a much of a Czech community
Yeah.
there. There's a substantial Albanian community in Detroit,
Uh-huh.
and uh, they did majority one of two things: either get a job on the assembly line
Hmm.
at Chrysler, like
Hmm.
my parents both did,
Yeah.
or the entrepreneurs would try to open a 24-hour Coney Island, 24/7 hot dog hamburger place in
Yeah.
Detroit proper.
Yeah.
And so Albanians were kind of known for opening those Coney Islands, and my dad always was against it. And his perception of restaurants or thoughts like, he was always very, do anything, get an education, get a degree, don't get into the restaurant business. But was a little different. What Gjelina actually ended up being, of course, is obviously a little bit different than what his perspective was.
For sure. For sure. And so for you, where, I mean, there was it just wide open what route you were going to take when you moved out here, or was there always something in you that wanted to be doing what you're doing now?
Oh, moving out here is completely wide open.
Mm-hmm.
Had no, did not have any idea specifically of what I would do or get into. And the coaching football and teaching and waiting tables, that was 2 years worth. And then after that, like during in the 2000 time, like the .com era,
Mm-hmm.
I got a job as an IT recruiter. And that was, especially .com wise, I was like a high paying hourly rate, and I was making more money than I had ever made. And my first $30,000 that I saved up, I ended up buying a 4 unit building here in Venice. And that's what really started getting to a different economic level and the ability of looking at real estate and thinking about real estate. And for me, in those 4 units, and I moved into and I lived in each one of those units over time, and I renovated the units. And I'd always had a big interest toward design, architecture, public spaces, and that just in going out and seeing more restaurants just led to just having an eye for, or just being very interested in, like, what's this bottle look like, where's it from, and why, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, tables, furniture, everything. That was something that was always a big deal to me. I'll say, like my college dorm, I thought I had the coolest college dorm,
Yep.
in my hall, so to speak. So that's
I
something
would
that,
think that you did.
yeah,
Yeah.
that was something that was always with me, but I don't know if I ever had a path or a thought. Certainly when I was either in college, I just didn't have, I didn't have a thought or an example on how that inspiration or that desire that I had could lead to something that could actually be making a living, so to speak. Uh,
That's one of the things I'm constantly trying to unpack now because I feel like if you go and look at the book area of entrepreneurs or successful businesses in a bookstore, right? Everything is so extreme, or the stories are just so neat and tidy. Like, a young blah 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 sketched in his room a light bulb over and over until he became blah. And you get this notion where, like, well, I don't know if I can be this because I wasn't like that kid who was obsessed with, you know, pizzas or whatever, so how could I ever become this like owner of all these pizza restaurants or whatever? And you get this notion that like there's supposed to be this prescribed path somehow based on these very clear indicators at a young age. And often those indicators are just very disguised in different ways. Like at my age now, I can really reflect back and now start to piece together why I'm where I am. But at the time, you just don't you certainly, I could never verbalize where I was going to end up. Or even we had dinner last night, and one of the women there who's done some really incredible things, she was talking to one of the younger guests at the table who's like 22, and he said, but did you know exactly that you would be doing what you're doing today, or did you at least hope for it? And she said, if I had really articulated what I had hoped for and built a plan for that, she said, I would have way undershot. She said, because I would have never even dreamt that this is where I would be. And she said, but just freeing it up to just take one day at a time really lets you do bigger things that are just unimagined at the time,
sure.
you know? So by taking that first 30,000, it's funny because that 30,000 was what I had saved up from American Express to start Tibby. And it was enough to like do enough to start to build a foundation, because that real estate was really your first.
That was it. That was the start.
Yeah. And people don't realize sometimes when you start to unpack where success came from, that buying of the buildings was where probably some real stability came into place, rather than you wouldn't have just rented a space and started a restaurant.
No question. The stability, that was the backstop, or the in case it doesn't work out, we own the real estate. In case that gave that gave me a great deal of confidence or comfort that, okay,
Mm.
this is the right move, because if it all doesn't work out, and at the time I actually lived here as well, so you had the property, there's bills on it, but I was like, well, if I could live here that saves me my rent expense like somewhere else. And uh, yeah, I was really willing to do sort of like whatever it took to get the building. Uh, and it was it was a thing,
Mm-hmm.
certainly, in terms of bringing my family into getting it. And uh, I remember I became at the time, like even when I was in escrow, I was quite obsessive about it. It's all I thought about
Yep.
on a regular basis. Just how am I going to get this? How am I going to close this? How is this going to happen?
It's interesting because I find that for a lot of people when they're trying to figure out how much risk can I take, a lot of them need a comfort level that I'll take this risk if I know that it will all work out. And when I've probed further with people and I've said, well, what does it all work out mean? For a lot of people, it's a certain amount of money in the bank that they feel is just their, like they'll never be in pain if they at least have that amount of money in the
Right,
bank.
right,
Um, but when you were saying that you always knew that like if things didn't work out, you own the real estate, right? Like you're never going to be flat out. And that did give you that chance to take those risks. But I think the key for a lot of people is really recognizing you have to build that foundation first that gives you that steady ground to start taking risks from. Um, Otherwise, I couldn't have dealt with that level of chaos if I didn't have at least like the foundation you're describing.
right. Yeah, the foundation, owning the real estate gave me the comfort of,
Hmm.
certainly.
But again, there was no playbook. You weren't thinking, I will buy real estate and then I will have the comfort level to now open restaurants. So, where did restaurants come into play? How did that idea come up?
Well, just part of what I wanted, obsessed over the building. I loved the building. I loved where it was on the street. It was on like the sleepy side of Abbot Kinney. What restaurants we had were mostly on the other end,
Hmm.
and I loved the scale of it, the position of it. There's a little single car garage in the back that still is there. That's 100 years old. Uh, so I had really obsessed over the building. Uh,
I'm sorry to interrupt real quick, but so you love the sleepiness versus the energy where everyone already is. Because I think a lot of people's instinct is to focus where everything is happening versus loving something and seeing it as an opportunity.
Sure, sure. I wanted. I was very happy that this was the sleepy side, and even the street was sleepier, so to
Hmm.
speak. And yeah, that's what drew me to the neighborhood. That's what drew, I think, a lot of people that lived here at that time. The understatedness of it, and just the non not too, particularly for Los Angeles. Venice was this particular sleepy little bohemian artistic like community that did not have the big brands anywhere near.
So at the time when you were drawn to the sleepiness of it, was that because you truly liked the vibe or you saw it as a business opportunity where if you go in sleepy, it will ultimately become bigger?
I loved the vibe. I loved living here. I've always lived within a square mile of here, and I said if I can own this property and walk up and down the street, and it was just so I loved that, and I thought uh, I did see potential in the sense of, hey, this could be like the best because of its location and how I can get it to look and feel. This could be the best restaurant down the street. It could
Yeah.
be one of the best restaurants in LA. I thought like I can really go for this, and I'm really confident that it can grow to something
Mm-hmm.
great. But
Mm-hmm.
great at that time was being, the best restaurant down the street or most interesting or uh, but I never, potential wise or thought wise, what it became was something that I think, and everyone that was involved, we grossly underestimated what it could possibly be because we just never thought it could be. We weren't thinking, uh, we weren't think, national acclaim or
Right.
international recognition or tourists coming from all over the world or cookbooks or shows. Like we didn't. That was never a goal,
Yeah.
either energetically or financially.
Yeah.
It was just like, this is going to be a great restaurant in Venice.
And that's where we were joking earlier. I was telling you that story, and I can't reveal the brand here, obviously, but how this notion for some companies that like authenticity is a trend right now,
Amazing.
and it's it seems so trite sometimes with sayings like "build it and they will come," but sayings do happen for a reason, and I think that a lot of people do. You watch Shark Tank, right? Like you're supposed to get on Shark Tank and be able to articulate the business plan and where are you 1 year, 5 year, 20 years, and how are you going to scale and make it super efficient. But to me, to you, I think the best process is to just let things unfold and see where it lands. It's the best process if you know what it is that you're wanting to get out of it. If you really, if you set about making a place that you wanted to be incredibly proud of and enjoy going to every day, to make it any other way would seem counterintuitive.
Of course, that would be a drag. That'd be an energetic drag for sure.
So how long was the process from, buying the building and you've got this idea of what you're wanting to create? How long did it take for you to get to a place where the doors were open?
It took 4 years to open the doors. So in '04, when I bought the building, I immediately moved in, and
Hmm.
maybe that first year I probably just enjoyed, living here for the most part
Yeah.
because I was on the
Because you're
street.
on the street, you're on
I'm
the
on the
beach, you're like,
street. I'm on the
it's
street.
California.
For me, it was, yeah, the most interesting street in the world. And now I lived on it,
Yeah.
and I'm living right in my neighborhood. And it was just peak. For me, that was like peak Venice, 2005 to 2010,
Yeah.
I'll say. Uh, but then it took from there, it took like 3 years to figure out, entitle, permit, build, construct,
Yeah.
and then finally open it in '08.
08. And you're single at this time? Are you married or?
I '07. I packed a lot. '07, I got married. 9 months later, we had a boy. A few months after that, we opened Gjelina.
Hmm. So two babies and
A year after that, we had our second boy,
yeah.
and we opened Takeaway next door. So a lot between '07 and '09, opening two restaurants. We're married, two restaurants, two kids,
Yeah.
which was great. So now there's a whole different planet out there. But the energy is still, the street's still great. The restaurant, and it's kind of funny, like numbers wise, the restaurant was doing better than I ever thought it could possibly do.
Yeah.
And by today's standards, it wasn't doing half of what we're doing now. And at the time, my perception is '09, like it's impossible for this restaurant to be any busier or better or
Right.
more. And holy cow, I can't believe it.
Right.
But
So two things from that. Number one, I'm just curious, because as you were talking, it reminded me, I was telling our team a story the other day, how I had given birth to Charlie, my second, and I remember 3 months later, we just had this like catastrophe happen in Hong Kong with one of our factories, and I had to fly to Hong Kong for like 3 weeks, and then I came home, and Charlie was attached to my mother-in-law, and he wouldn't come to me, but like you somehow you just get through all that stuff. I mean, I just remember you just never stopped working. But then I think right now that I never stopped working, and maybe 23 years ago, I thought that at this time in my life, I would really not be working as hard. But you do, because do you keep creating stuff for yourself? And because you never just said, okay, we'll have this one restaurant and I'll just go surfing. You kept doing more and more.
I kept doing more, and I tell you, particularly with that New York like fire setback, I did a lot through there. But if I'm being honest, here in 25, I am trying to press the the pause button on
Hmm.
certainly on expansion and other things energetically. Even for Venice, I came here in '96, and there was times, particularly when I lived here, I thought, I am living in the, and it was where the Gjelina kitchen is. I was just
Yep.
living in a cinder block studio, and I was like, I'm living in the coolest space and the coolest building and the best street, and it was really. I was a 10 out of 10 drinking the Venice Kool-Aid, and it was great for that time of my life, and it continued to be even through the aughts and the tens.
Hmm.
But energetically now, I am trying I'm slowing down with Venice.
Yeah.
Creatively or energetically, would like to try to get to New York more on a full-time basis, and maybe start doing some things there. Energetically.
Did you feel like you needed to bring on the New York space in order to really keep growing and keep the business alive? Was that the reason?
No,
Or
not at all. It didn't have a business plan or a growth plan at all. It was just visiting New York, loving the neighborhood. That project was kind of born in. I'm almost embarrassed to say, like in 2017.
yeah.
And whenever we did visit New York, staying at the Bowery around the corner and just loving that neighborhood. And I was like,
Hmm.
wow, this feels like a neighborhood that Gjelina could or should be in. And we found the space and the streets we loved. Uh,
So
it,
I'm so
so
curious.
it was more again. It was all very similar emotions and feelings about New York in 2016, 2017, that neighborhood that I had, a dozen years prior about this neighborhood.
Well, that's what I love hearing because I think a lot of people have a perception that, okay, if I don't start my company in an incubator at Stanford, if I choose to start it as authentically as this came about, I think a lot of people believe that, like, okay, I'll start it authentically, but then you can do that for like 5 years and then you have to like become this buttoned up and follow by these rules that you start to realize never really exists because if you've never existed before, it's hard to like have these rules
Yeah.
exist for you because you've never been here before. And so as you're describing New York, you're playing out Venice.
Yeah, 12 years later.
Yeah, and you're still using the same playbook.
That's right.
You haven't, you're smarter, probably like on how to do certain things, but you're still completely authentic with it. You haven't hired now, I'm assuming, a troupe of people who went out and surveyed and looked at neighborhoods
Yeah.
and told you what was right or wrong or
Not even close. Not
yeah.
even close. It was just a real affinity for the neighborhood and wanting to ultimately even like move to New York.
Hmm.
Like, yeah, we wanted to move there for our kids.
Yeah.
My wife's originally from the East Coast. I'm originally from Michigan. And I said, hey, let's get to New York and see what we can do there, so to speak, and see how long. Maybe stay there for 1 year, maybe stay there for 5. Who knows? It was just very open ended, and so that was there. There was never, like I said, there wasn't a business plan. There wasn't a, hey, can we make this brand stronger? I remember, yeah, I don't even, yeah, that there wasn't that thought process at all back then.
Hmm. And it's funny how somewhere between having this unbelievably thought out process and no thought process, they both kind of like the no thought process leads to a lot of continuity sometimes in what gets opened up next. And that's why, because it's coming from you. And when it comes from one place, it can't help but have a through line,
Sure,
right? Because you are the through line.
sure.
And when you opened up the bakery, the flower shop, how did each new thing that you built around Gjelina here, how did things tumble up next?
So from Gjelina in '08, we opened next door at Takeaway a couple years later. And what we were doing was we were baking, and this Takeaway space next door is really small. And we were baking bread and doing pizza dough
Mm-hmm.
in that space. And it was pretty inefficient. And uh, we just kept on getting busier. I think I had mentioned I thought this is the busiest we can possibly be, but we were just getting busier later. So more volume. So conversations started happening about a commissary, about, hey, can we do pizza dough? Can we relieve our kitchens of pizza dough production and bread
Mm-hmm.
production? So and again, it was all like very Venice-y, meaning I go to Gold's Gym here in Venice, and then one day I walk out, and right across the street is this white building, and there's a For Lee sign on it, and I called it, and you were there. That's it's off of Abbot Kinney. It's a very uh, it's a pretty unique block in
Yeah.
itself, and it's a great building across from like a parking lot, across randomly from Gold's Gym,
Yeah, if you're
another
working out there,
warehouse.
I'm sure you just walked out the door and you're like, I can't believe this Mecca has just opened up that
Yeah, oh,
is perfect for what you've created there at the bakery. It's
and the bakery. What I love about that little neighborhood, and we talked about how Abbot Kinney changing in big brands, and I've fully accepted it. I'm on board, and I think the gentrification story is or the over. I think that's just a boring story by
mm-hmm.
now that I got tired of maybe 10
Yep.
years ago.
Yep.
But what I do think makes Gjusta special, and what always like make it special, uh, I have the property on the other side of it as well that we use for storage and for offices,
Yeah.
but there aren't any other buildings for rent, so to speak.
Uh-huh.
There isn't like
So it's never
it's
going to just
never
become, yeah.
there's a parking lot across the street. There's this huge warehouse across the street, and the same owner that's owned property in Venice for 30 years, he owns all of it, and I lease some of it. And next door to Gjusta, there's a tiny little boxing gym, and there's art gallery, like the big merch that block is there aren't going to be neon signs, or there aren't the big
So
brands aren't coming there
so
ever.
so what's incredible over the last couple of days, we've had all of these women coming out. We're in LA doing this event for styling, and we're asking them about Gjelina, about telling them that we're doing this conversation with you, and so many people refer to you as the true just the truest place, the place where that things are made by real people on a spot where people really love where they are. It's like the true definition of community, authenticity, all these things that are like the buzzwords are supposed to be on a plaque behind a barista somewhere, but
They are
it is,
they are today's or this decade's buzzwords. Yes.
yeah. But just by you just being in this flow and doing these things naturally, nothing's ever a buzzword. It just is. You're in it.
Yeah, I am in it. Like I lived between Gjelina and Gjusta. I
Hmm.
always have. I think I mentioned I've lived within a half mile of here. I came
Hmm.
here as a 20 something. I'm a 50 something now. I've started the family here. I got married here. Uh, it's always for me what really started it, and what continued for over a decade was the desire of just making something really interesting.
Hmm.
And the chef that I hired at the beginning, he also lived in Venice and also shared a lot of the same views and thoughts that I did, or I do. And I yeah, I think how could it be any different? If you live here for that long and are really interested in wanting it, and that's like the goal of, did I want to make money? Of course, I want to support my family, of course. But back then, I I didn't really know any better. Almost like, of course I'm going to be okay. Like,
Right.
of course, yeah, everything's going to be fine because everything's going to. And maybe I have that attitude in general. Everything's going to be fine because everything's going to be fine. But
Yeah.
we want to have something really interesting and really great that you can be proud of. And
Which it
so
seems like that was kind of the core principle that drove everything.
that
Because,
that was completely the core principle. And I will say, and I think I touched on this a little bit earlier, as far as like being tapped out on Venice a little bit. And I am a little bit tapped out just because I've been here for so long, and I
sure.
feel like is there another stop or another city that I can go to, and at least just to try to check out for a bit. But uh, I will say, like, having kids, Gjelina opened 17 years ago, and my oldest
Mm-hmm.
is 17, and
Yep.
so I will say, with they very much grew up in all these places. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they'll tell you, they're the first to say, oh, I'm sick of Gjelina. I can't stand. They're kind of sick of it, but they grew up with, like, blueberry pancakes for breakfast, and my memories and my thought process of taking my kids here, and literally having them in the Bjorn, pushing
Yep.
them in the stroller. Now they're teenagers. I gotta, like, now they're like, I force them. We do Monday 6 p.m. same table in the back at Gjelina. They
Yep.
have to come. You don't have to eat. You don't have to talk, but you have to come. I've been doing that for a couple of years now, and I tell you, at the beginning, it was almost a little. I'll say, you know, I'll say, like, almost embarrassing, because it was kind of dysfunctional, because just the way their attitudes towards each other, or being
Yep.
shitty, or just starting, or just nonsense fighting. But over time, it's actually gotten, and I don't know if that's maturity, or they just kind of gave in, like, okay, we'll come. Uh, but I'm hoping that, or I know that that's going to be part of, particularly Gjelina, will be part of their memories forever. They
Yeah.
literally grew up with it from, their entire lives. So I'm very grateful for that. And that's actually, for me, motivation. Whether or not they ever get involved in the places is something they'll figure out. But
Mm-hmm.
uh, keeping it and holding on to that, for decades to come, is very motivating for me.
Yeah, that's I mean, the one who organized this podcast and brought this together was my son, who would ride around the office in the middle of, like, we'd have a Neiman Marcus would come in, we'd be so excited, and I'm presenting to them. And then this, like, 2-year-old goes zooming by in this little machine and starts playing Barney music. And
It's
it
pretty
just
great.
was what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. It made it great.
Yeah.
Um, I'm curious, I hear from a lot of entrepreneurs that one of the things that keeps you going is, you're motivated that you're doing well or well enough. And then you keep moving forward and forward. And I'm so grateful that I didn't have so much availability on the internet at the time to really check if I was doing well or not. Because I think they would have said, by industry terms, that I wasn't doing well. And me being delusional that we were doing okay really kept me going. And so when you were deciding whether or not you were doing well, were those standards that you had set for yourself, or was there anything in the industry that was like a benchmark for you to work against?
I didn't know, especially for several. I didn't know any industry benchmarks for at least 5 years. I had no idea. I was a first time
Yeah.
restaurant guy. I didn't have a restaurant community of fellow entrepreneur or restaurant owners. I'm not even deeply involved in the greater hospitality industry than I should. I've been getting better at that, but
Mm-hmm.
certainly at the beginning there were no standards, no metrics that I could rely on at all. But uh, and particularly at the beginning, I was here every day, and I very consistently felt great about the room. How
Mm-hmm.
does the room look, feel, and sound? And uh, it, like, I know well enough. Like, I feel very comfortable, like, in that metric, so to speak. Like, hey, this is how it looks and feels. And then food wise, but it was for me. It was the best food that I had eaten my entire life, and it was very consistent.
Yeah.
And people and staff were pushed hard, but treated great and with
Mm-hmm.
respect. And you could just see the machine was it wasn't without its issues, and
Sure.
things are coming up all the time, but the food was consistently great. The
Yeah.
place felt consistently great, and we had staff or people. Uh, I'll even to make like a restaurant, not being a traditional restaurateur or first time restaurateur, and I was a father of young children. Uh, I had several staff over the years kind of comment to me, like, they're used to a different personality, like running a restaurant
Sure.
that was a little bit more uh, maybe party centric
Yeah.
or a little bit more involved in what the glory, just in terms of
Yeah.
attention with staff, with like, and none of that really, that I was, yeah, not very little, if any of that ever like resonated with me or interest wise. And I think that really, so basically I get by restaurant standards, about as like G rated of a restaurant that you could have, which I didn't know any. And I think that also helped. And I'm not even talking. Yeah,
No,
we've never been and never like will be in these headlines of this, of just debauchery or just of craziness.
I'm
Uh,
laughing because I had a client the other day who had moved from New York and she was like really part of the fashion industry. And she was like, well, Amy, like, I mean, she's like, I couldn't be part of it anymore. Just like the drugs, and I was like, I had Barney the dinosaur, the kids, like, I knew nothing of what she spoke about. It didn't,
yeah, my quick compliment to that story. I ran up to the office one day in a little bit of a panic because my nanny was outside
hmm
and we hadn't paid her and she needed cash.
right.
And it was like, I think it was like $400. And I
Yeah.
came running up into the office and I said to somebody, hey, can you grab, $400 from the safe? And she looked at me and she was like kind of surprised. And then she gave it to me and I ran
And you
down.
ran out the street and
Well, I ran down and I gave it to her, but then she asked me like what I needed it for. And I said, oh yeah, to pay the nanny. And she said, oh, she was fine. That's so funny. My old owner used to need cash to buy Coke all the time. And I'm like, well, okay,
diapers.
not today, not ever.
Yeah.
But and I'm so I think
But
that certainly helped.
But I think this is like debunking the ideas of what the tropes are of industries, of business, of entrepreneurs who are wildly successful, and even what the definition of wildly successful is. Because I think when you understand what success means to you, it helps you really figure out what would be the steps that you could take that would unravel actually. It might give you financial success in one way, but it would really unravel the things that you truly consider to be successful. And for me, it's spending time with my family and knowing my kids and what they're up to. And
Sure. Yeah, being aware of what could possibly unravel. I think I'm keenly aware of what can unravel, the Venice Village, so to speak, and
Mhm.
yeah, I feel like we're surrounded by the right people, and kind of always will be. I think as time has gone, and I've become a little bit, yeah, I'll be like more protective and ensuring that,
Mhm.
hey, there's this baseline here that just,
Can't be crossed.
yeah.
Um, what's next?
What's next?
Will you be in New York with us more? Or?
I hope to, but visiting hopefully next fall. Maybe I can do like a get an apartment and move there with my kids for a year. I've been threatening to do that though for the past few years, but there's been things that have come up that have prevented that. But hopefully next fall.
Okay, and so many of these examples of where things just unfolded where you are, it really moved along the line of trusting your gut, right? Like whether you even knew that you were doing it or not, you were just like, I love this. Why would I not do it? Are there any times where you didn't trust your gut and you really regretted it, or did it turn into a positive thing?
So it's funny you say that, and very, very recently, what I've done, and certainly how I started, I like to think that I brought aboard people that knew a lot more than me about restaurants, and clearly a chef that knows about food or an operator. And I think I was certainly successful at that, and have continued to hire the right people and have the right people around me. With that said, and my but in that regard is, for the past few years, I had a niggle on some things that, this isn't quite right.
Yeah.
And by quite right, like, I'm not talking something that, like dramatic, or morally bankrupt or anything, but this is just isn't quite right. But I'm going to trust this person. And now looking back, uh, one, two, I remember saying something, verbally out loud, and it just, it was 5 different things. And now looking back, and it all happened within the past like 2 or 3 years. Again,
Yeah.
decisions that were not major, but not minor either. And I've certainly corrected them. But I was right all 5 times, and I didn't move on it, and I didn't act on it. And no, I don't want to live in regret or disappointment, whatever, but not making those 5 mistakes, or not making that same mistake again.
I wonder if I did a poll with entrepreneurs who are in our place, where you've stayed independent, you really did it based on your own desires and everything. I'm going to try and articulate this because I'm thinking this out loud for the first time. I bet there's a first stage where you're operating off of your gut and you're wishing that you had more information, but you don't even have access to it, but you're operating off of your gut and you're really excited, but you probably think that it's just happening to work out. That we're so lucky this worked out. Like, I'm so glad this turned out to be right. And then there's the phase where you get a little more stable and you're like, now I'm at the stage where I know some experts and I can now bring in some expert advice and finally get the advice that I wish I had always had. And then in that stage, you realize that that's all for shit. It's all for shit. And then stage 3 is, I know that it's for shit. My gut was right. I'm going to move along on my gut. And when you know your gut, you realize that the opportunity then is to find others who think and believe like you do and let them know that you're there rather than to change what you're doing.
I'm laughing because that's pretty extraordinary. I could be a little bit more conservative. You said it was all for shit. I mean, it wasn't too bad, but it was not what I wanted, not what I thought was right, and I didn't have the confidence to know better. Yeah, especially at the very beginning. Yeah, everything was working out. Everything was working. That first stage you were referencing, yeah, we're working hard. Everything was working out like very well. I was like, certainly. It was tremendously well, and in a sense, because it was happening so well, I had I had a little bit of the imposter syndrome going on. Like, wait a minute, I ain't that smart,
right?
But a lot of stuff is really happening great. And then you're right, when I found like people that I thought, oh, okay, now these people like really know.
And you're excited because you now get to talk to the people who know.
Very excited,
and they're talking to you.
Even have them lead, like, absolutely. That was exciting, and now it's not, and it's actually, so it's 17 years. Like, is that how long it takes to either really learn to know what you're doing, or have the confidence to know what you're doing, and a combination of the two. But now, yeah, that's kind of, I've never heard those 3 phases before, Amy, and that's
they're good, right? Because it nails
so good. It's so good. I'm a little conservative. I don't like bashing things for shit. It wasn't for shit. Those people, it wasn't. But it was. I mentioned there was 5 specific key points. Like, no, I don't think so. Like, no, and I could play it back in my head over the course of like 2 years, and 0 for 5. They are.
Well, and let me preface this for shit comment. I think a better way to phrase it is to say that they're industry experts, but they're experts at what they know. And when you have built something that is so predicated on, like, they just can't know your business the way that they know it. So they know what they know. And you have to understand that they only know what they know, and that what they know doesn't necessarily apply to you. And I think when you're in that phase 2, you are just kind of pumped to be getting information from them, and you don't really know how to separate what applies to you and what doesn't. And so it's not necessarily shitty advice. It could be great advice for someone else, but it's not good advice for you.
What applies to you and what doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Cool.
That's awesome.
Cool.
That was amazing.
Oh.
Say a little thank you and goodbye.
Was there anything else that you wanted us to get in about any of the things that
No,
doing?
this has been fun. I've
Okay.
never had the microphone in front of me on it, and I like to talk about the story a little bit in the right environment, and
Yeah.
this is the right environment, and you made it very easy, and so thank you, Amy.
I love this. And so the next question for me to ponder, and we'll have to get to it a later one, maybe when you're in New York, is does it have to take this long for someone to figure it out? How can we speed up the
Yeah,
process?
I don't
for
think it
someone
should. I
else?
think I was a little bit of a
Yeah.
dum-dum.
No,
I had some life curveballs as well, and I have some excuses, but it probably shouldn't take that long.
Yeah.
It probably shouldn't take that long.
It took that long for me, for sure. But
Okay.
all right, this
All
has
right.
been great.
Yeah. Thank you, Amy.
Till New York.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.